That range is pretty accurate. And again, this here goes to the processing fees. When you adjust your status, today, it's a few $1,000s per family member when you're finally approved for the green card. You have to pay the filing fee. So I just had a family of 4. They spent almost $8,000 in fees beyond my legal fee because they happen to have a wife and 2 children. Put all that together becomes expensive, but in the end, it's, you know, at this point when you're paying here, and usually these fees come in stages. I know me, when I work on these cases, I don't take up front this fee. This is a portion of that to send off the initial paperwork. When that's approved, then we go to step 2, then we have a second draw of money. When you're approved and you have your green card and we have to prepare the adjustment of status, we take the other part. So it's not, you come in one time, one shot, and you don't even know if you're going to be approved or not. And then the processing fees today, depending on when you do this, every month USCIS is increasing their fees. So it's,
yes,
no,
yes.
I'm
So,
exaggerating.
and
April,
I have noticed in April they will pass the fee at 7,500, I guess. So if you,
4,800.
sorry.
It was
4,800 now. It's
Yeah.
going to go over 7,000.
It goes 7,000,
Everything's
7,500.
going
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Even basic H-1B fee, everything's going up. So it's.
You know, this it's again is a green card that you buy your green card. You must to understand that is an investment, but is the easy step if you have the money, of course. If you have the money, if you get the money by whatever to process to the green card quickly, because again the E2 visa you never get the green card. You are a visitor. And like it was, you cannot have access easy to the loan. You cannot have access to the school loan as well, either. So a lot of things that is completely different when you are citizenship. You know, obvious. So, okay, everything is of course we are in the country. You know. So let's continue. So yes, the source of fund at the I-526E. You have to understand that the form I-526E is the form for the source of fund. At the moment that this one is approved, you can go ahead. And this is the job of your attorney. So the source of fund that you can have, yes, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So these funds are different categories of what most of the people come forward with money on. They'll either get it through a bank loan. We're talking the 800,000. They'll get it from a home equity line of credit. They can get it from salaries. Just be in your savings that you've acquired over the years. You can get it from the sale of a business, a home, a gift from parents or from family members, stocks, bonds. All of this qualifies. You just have to demonstrate the source of it. And in the 526, and when we send all that paperwork in, kind of even goes back to the E2 in a sense, but this is sometimes 5 times more than what we're talking. And then it goes into the escrow account of the escrow agent holding it and then passed into the project. That's sort of the stream of how it goes to get to the point of proving that you qualified for that investment correctly under the 526E to get that approved. And I've had people that cannot demonstrate up here accurately where that money has come from, and I've told them, if we can't do that, there's no sense in you paying me, there's no sense in you handing
Not do it.
$800,000 over because you're not going to get approved.
Of course.
And it's problematic, and as a lot of people say, well, they're honest, but they just can't prove the money correctly, and it's an automatic denial.
And the EB5 project, and you approved, we will see after on the other side. You have the project usually is for 5 years. Usually, there is some project that is a little different. I will explain to you. 5 years, but the 5 years can be extended. The developer have the right to extend for 1 year more or 2 years more, sometimes 7 years.
I mean, that's an important thing that we didn't touch on because I was really letting him sort of lead the EB5 talk, is that when you put your money in, you are expecting to get it out. There is an exit strategy of all of these EB5 centers to refund you your money. Now, your money is at risk, sort of a meteor hitting the streets in New York. When you're building a project in Manhattan, more likely than not, what will happen is they'll complete the project, they will refinance it through the bank,
Yes.
they'll get a huge amount of money out of the project to refund all of the investors their $800,000. That's the ideal scenario. And they usually say in the paperwork, it's a 5-year process is what our expectation to get you your funds back are. So you can count on very little percentage of return for a 5-year period, and with the hopes of getting that revenue back, that money back at the end of the 5-year period.
Correct. So the process it is here. Exactly. This is the EB5 process. Source of fund, E526E petition. At the moment that is approved here, we put 1 at 12 months. But again, we get some approval very quick, depend of the project again. So yes, go ahead. This is your
I love
job.
this flow chart right here. So I like this one because it's really
Sure.
easy to understand. So I look at it like this. You're either in the US or you're out of the US. Okay?
Exactly.
You're here on an H-1B, you're here on an E-visa, or you're sitting in your country overseas doing this process. You're going to go one of the two. Starts here. Source of funds, filing your I-526E. When the I-526E is approved, at that point, you decide if you're in the US, okay, or outside the US, you're then going to go to the consulate to get that green card processed, and then you're going to come up here and you're going to have your green card here. You're at the same spot. If you're in the US, you can file your adjustment of status paperwork to get you here. Outside of the US, you have to go through the embassy. Inside the US, under a different status, you can do it all by mail. You don't have to pass through the embassy that you came through when you first got your visa to come in. Then you get your conditional green card, valid for 24 months, 2 years. At that point, you file an I-829, the attorney files it, and you ask for the removal of the conditions. At that point, you're working closely with the EB5 Center. They demonstrate that they have qualified you, that the project has either reached completion or that they've done enough required to have you get your 10-year green card, which comes from this point here. Remove the conditions, 10-year, then the US passport. So everybody starts here. Source of funds of the 526, and then the decision is if you're here or outside the US, you have to go through the embassy or you do it by mail. And there's one thing here that doesn't demonstrate is there was a change in some of the procedure legally here, that there was so much backup. If you came from mainland China, for example, you were waiting 7 years. You were waiting 7 years to get to this situation here. And what happened was they said, wow, this is really hindering the procedure, and people are waiting 7 years for this. So they now, if you're going into a target employment area, if you're going through one of these centers, what's happened is they've accelerated that now, so you don't have to wait so long like you did before, because people invested $500,000, $1 million, and they were waiting far too long. If you were from France, there was no wait because there wasn't a lot of French people applying under that. So it's always been this case with Mexico, with India, with China, on all sorts of visas. There's a very limited number from that country, but you have so many people applying from that country that there just aren't enough visas. So the priority date could have something to do with this as well, but generally it's a very simple chart. But if you look at the timing on it, you have about a year here for the approval of this, and then it says here 8 to 10 months to get your adjustment of status paperwork filed and approved. So you're looking at a year and then another 10 months here. It's about a 2-year process to get you here. Down here it's about the same. I don't know, I like 4 to 6 months, varies per investor, per country, depends on what embassy you're going through. Sometimes these embassies take forever, sometimes you can get an interview in a week. Everybody's nodding because they know they've been there before. But yeah, that's how the flow chart works.
Yes, exactly. So the typical EB5 project, that the investment that we have here for the EB5, $800,000, and they have to create the NCA, New Commercial Enterprise. So the single shareholder, it was what I was telling you before, you become a single shareholder of this process. And in this process, you have just here, the job creation entity, the GCE. Job creation entity, and you become, and after, of course, you have the loan of the bank, but it's exactly the same process here. The developer with the equity, the bank of the loan, your investment here, and the job creation here. Got it? So, something?
No.
Okay, so this is the typical project capital stack, like the equity that I was telling you from the developer, exactly, this is a project. Also, some project that I just want to explain to you, there is 3 projects that I select. I love those projects, this is why I select that. And why I love those projects, because this is the project that first is already approved. Second, that we have a quick I-95 with the 26E approved with the source of fund, and this is already approved by the USIS. And we have, for example, the Yellowstone, that you know that. The Yellowstone, we have already 46. So 46 EB5 approved on this one. And again, last month I have one EBE 526E approved in 1 month with the Yellowstone project. So it is why I love it. After I will explain to you, so you can have a Zoom 101 with us if you want more information about the project. We can go to a walkthrough to this project. This project exists. This is the phase 2. The Yellowstone, this is a phase 2. The first one is already done. Is a community, is a Jewish community. So all the things is an amazing project. I love it. So everything is working. You know, because like, you know, Jewish community on the Friday and Saturday, they don't drive, they don't touch nothing. So everything is working. And there is a lot of celebrity that there is, Bezos have an apartment over there. There is already, so this is the really secure project because the job is already created. There is more than 46 EB5 that is already done. And again, last week we have one approved that is already only started 1 month ago. So
you can tell just by looking at a project like this versus I use the amusement park in the middle of nowhere as an example. It's like, where would you rather put your 800,000 in something that you can touch and feel, that you show up and you can already see these things underway, or sitting down across from some guy who's telling you we're going to have the greatest auto racing track that the United States has ever seen, and you say, I don't know. But this is real estate based. You can touch it, you can feel it. This company has, already has a history of approvals. That's always important.
Yes.
You don't want to go with someone that just opened up and necessarily doesn't have any approvals yet. Follow behind everybody who's happy, right?
Yes, it is what we're working always with a company that we know, and there is 2 other one after that I will show you, because we already did some EB5 with them, and we know exactly the people that are working over there, and we know exactly the project was going on. So this is what we like, and this one Yellowstone, this is a phase 2 again. So it's all the first one was very good, was very quick, and it is why they're starting to the phase 2 and maybe the phase 3 as well. There is another one that is in Miami, directly in Biscayne Boulevard over there, Nexo. Nexo is a nice building that is allowed short-term rental, again, that I present to you before, that you see the taxes is very low, so the people love to invest. This project is almost at the middle, I guess, if I remember. You can walk through from this project, you can meet the developer, you can meet the sales center, you can meet the realtor, the broker that is working over there, and this project I like it too because it's in North Miami. It's not so expensive though, so there is the access for the typical person, someone that he want to invest for $200,000, he can invest $200,000 on this real estate condo and do a loan for the rest. It's easy, and he can come from Cuba, from France, from Canada, from anywhere. We have so many projects that is possible to do a loan for the foreigner. And it's easy. Also, it's unbelievable, but it's much easier to do a loan for a foreigner than a US citizen. It is what it is. It's working like this. So this one is a short-term rental towers that there is 15 floor, 254 studio. There is a 1, 2, 4, and 5, 4 bedroom. I can present to you exactly the tower, exactly what it is. We have on my YouTube channel, we have some video of this project, the loan that there is on the ground floor when they're starting this project, and all the explication. We have a presentation with the home agent that we did on Instagram, and it is on my YouTube channel. If you want, before to get all information in person, you can call me, you can do a Zoom meeting and do a presentation for this building. That is very, very nice. And the last, so this is 254, is luxury residence, and the price is not so luxury. It's starting, if I remember, at 650 for this one. Of course, it's exactly all the project that it can exist in Florida or other country. When you're starting the building, it's more cheaper when this is going on. And the last one is Smart Brickell. Smart Brickell, I love it. Why I love it, Smart Brickell? Because Smart Brickell is 3 towers. The first tower is already done, it's finished. The second tower is in process. It is in the second tower that we have the EB5 process. And there is only 7 coupons. Why there is only 7 coupons? Because, again, go back to the beginning. For the job creation, for the amount of the investment, for the amount of the equity, and for the position for the loan investor. So this one, Smart Brickell, is also a short-term rental. So this is the 3 tower. It's on Biscayne as well, but more than the downtown, you know. So this one for the short term is amazing. There is another building that the DL sir that is just over there, just next door, and it was working very well.
This is downtown Miami now,
yes.
Obviously.
Yes.
And when I moved there 15 years ago, it was half of that. And if you look at what they're projecting, only by 2030, it's starting to look more and more like New York. I mean, look how dense that really is for any other country, any other city we have outside of New York in this country. It's tough to. San Francisco is pretty dense, but it's just amazing that little old Miami at the bottom
I know.
now is becoming this huge. There was something I just read that said there are now more bank headquarters in Miami internationally than in New York.
Yes, correct.
Oh.
Yes, correct. yes. So, like you see, Smart Brickell, I will explain you quickly. So the first tower is already done, okay? The second tower, we have 7 coupons only. But the thing that it is already started. You remember that I was telling you that the project usually, when the real project, when you want to apply for EB5 project is 5 years, it can be 6 and 7, remember? This one is already done. Usually it's 4 years, 5 years to ending the project. This one will finish in 3 years. What do you mean? Even in 3 years, it will go back the money to the EB5 investor. It's very important. The second thing that you can, in parallel, you can invest at the same time of your EB5 investment in a real estate, in one apartment. You are not buying an apartment. I must to be clear. You can invest in an apartment in parallel that you say, my investment for the EB5 will go into the apartment that I want to buy tomorrow is a penthouse for 1 million, for example, and I invest 1 million today. Okay, in 3 years, when my money go to the apartment because my EB5 project is done. Okay, but you have your green card and you have your money back on the apartment, of course, but you can, after the 3 years, this apartment can be finished and delivered and generate more money. It is why on the brochure that you see here, you can have the rentability for 6%. Why? Because the 2 years now, usually that you can have for 2%, you can have 6% for the apartment that is already done. This is the project that there is with the Smart Brickell. So it's a little different, but it's exactly the same process. And Smart Brickell localization is amazing. The state where it is Florida, so no taxes, no state taxes. Be careful, because you have also the what is the name? The BTR. The BTR for the rent,
Sales tax.
the sales taxes, exactly. So you have the sales taxes, but it's very low. So it's 6% if I remember, and nothing more. So this project is amazing, and only what I was telling you, 46, but 7 in total EB5 coupon for this unit. Any question on that? Okay, so that's it. If you want to, if you have some client, I don't know if there is some company, if you have some client that is interested for the EB5, it's a pleasure to do a Zoom meeting with Jeffrey, with me, and we can explain all the project, all the system, the EB5 or the E2, and matter, depend of the client that you have, or for you personnel, there is no problem. You can schedule a Zoom meeting with us, and that's it. We are now.
Yeah.
Some remark?
No, I mean, listen, I have, my firm is based in Miami. We do immigration work of all sorts. We prefer these ease investment-based things. Are a little more sophisticated, and a little more fun. I don't charge for consultations. I've never done that. So even today afterward, I don't have a flight back to Miami for many hours, so I'm happy to sit with anybody and talk a little bit if you want to do that, schedule that. And on my business cards, I believe I have my cell number on them. I'll give them to each of you. And I work closely with Fabrice, and we're happy to, we're taking calls every day from everybody. So
yeah, sure.
It's not a problem. I'll just give a couple of cards up here.
I've got your card. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
Sure. Does anybody have any questions on either one of these brief projects that we spoke about, either the E2 or the EB5? The E2 works, let's say that you were going to buy a business, and Fabrice finds you a restaurant to buy, just for an example. You're going to go to contract on that. You're going to take probably 30 days to get that process done to where you will own the restaurant, right? You do your due diligence, you have a closing, you get the keys. At that point, I need about a week to get the file done, and then it goes to the consulate. The consulate, average 45, 60 days, you're at your interview, you have your visa. So maybe a 90-day process, start to finish, from the moment you know what you want to do. Building or creating a business underneath E2 could take a little bit longer. It's not necessarily for me or for the consulate. It's just, how can you develop your idea on this day and get it in front of me ready to operate and qualify for the E2, right? Because you got to find your employees, you have to get your lease, you have to get your business plan, got to get everything together that way. It's just a little different when you are creating a business rather than buying something that exists.
Yes, more difficult.
Oftentimes we tell people, buy something that exists, that has a little bit, even if it's on the lower end of the market, buy it, because you already have some revenue coming. It's just a lot easier to build on that than it is to sort of just start from scratch.
It's more, yes, it's more credible for the when you go to your appointment to embassy, because when you go with the creation, you have to. By the way, you have to do the business plan, but when the income exists,
yes, you really have to prove that that's going to be a viable business. At least you say, look, this nail salon I just bought, I'm going to turn it into a spa, but I have $60,000 of income coming into my pocket to live tomorrow when I show up.
Yeah.
If you're creating it, you got to convince the embassy that you're going to have enough money to live, and you're not going to default on your obligations, and you're going to pay your rent, and you're going to pay it.
More difficult.
Right? Yeah. But
obviously.
Process-wise, it's just a couple of months, really, start to finish on it.
Okay, that makes sense.
In terms of the consultation, when you say we have a client to
Sure.
reach you, do you have any minimum amount of that you say, as long as the client don't have this minimum amount, there's no making sense to consultation with him? Because as we know from the state to state, X amount of money can get you 80 units in some rural area or 20 units somewhere else.
Right. I mean, look, for the EB5, you have to come with that amount of money or it's not going to work. So some people need to be educated. They might say, look, I want to know. I give them my time because maybe they have money coming somehow in another year. And I give them a little bit of knowledge on it. On an E2, it's a lot less money, right? So it's $100,000. I'll talk to you. They might, for some people, that's just a matter of selling their apartment or getting a gift from their parents or taking a loan for it. So I'm open always to take phone calls from people. I know Fabrice as well. We're not going to spend hours going over an EB5 if you don't even have the money for it. But certainly to educate people on the process, I'm happy to take the calls. We'll do it. I do it often.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a question?
Yes, hi guys. I know you covered this already, but regarding EB5 processing time, rural versus city. Again, what's the average time as of 2024?
It really depends on the project, but I can tell you that the rural ones now, since the new legislation, are going much faster.
Yeah.
So that was, but it's, I don't want to mislead. I mean, I know that Fabrice speaks the truth on the one that he got back very quickly, but I would call that, it's a rare occasion. It depends on the project. It depends on
The lawyer.
on a lot of things. Listen,
Yes, too.
yes and no. I mean, look, there are times I do things, I send them off and I'm like, I think I'm a very competent lawyer. I send things and it takes longer than what was filed 2 days before. I think it truly matters whose desk it goes on, how much is behind you. They could have got an influx of cases in the month before and it's just going to take a little longer to process.
Sitting.
Yeah, I mean, and the problem with immigration, my biggest struggle, I can't call anybody. They don't let you do it. I mean, I can make my inquiries just like you can. I know some shortcuts and I know some things, but you're talking to a computer or someone who's reading off of a computer, which is even worse than you call. It's like trying to get anything done today. It's really
Is
difficult.
New York City a much longer processing time?
No, it's actually not necessarily about where you live. That matters sometimes. If you're getting married and you're going to wait, in New York, there's hundreds of petitions filed for residents locally here. It doesn't really work that way with where you live. It's more about what's going on in EB5 processing units.
So approximately a $50, $100 million project, what would be the approximate processing time?
Again, the amount of money on
A year
that.
or two? Or
Yeah, I mean, look, I would have to say
ballpark?
for the 526. Well, with this group, let's just use what we know because you've been involved in those. Have you gotten any anything beyond that one that was a month? What are the developers telling you is coming back on some of those projects you've just presented? 2 years, a year and a half?
2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
The
want to
thing that it is, Jeff, say, the EB5 is completely different. You can live in New York City and apply for the EB5 that the project that is in Florida. It doesn't matter. There is no,
If a project is established,
Exactly.
they have them going through, and they're regularly getting approved.
Yes.
It's a little faster than this first few that are being approved at the very beginning of a new project, right? But it's really, really hard to put that on because USCIS puts out their ideal processing times. Forget it.
And not much of a difference between Manhattan or the rural areas of Buffalo? There's not much of a difference, you're saying?
No, I don't personally believe that there is. Now the rural areas, what's happened now is they just generally started processing rural area TEA, target employment area projects a little faster because it was such a backup. Why is that? Because it was the lesser expensive way into the EB5. The target employment areas, remember, are 800. Non-targeted is $1,050,000. You have more people filing the $800,000 ones, which gave more backup
Is there a
in the
state,
process.
that's faster?
Not necessarily, no. Not to my knowledge, there isn't.
And Puerto Rico is also included, correct?
I'm sorry?
Puerto Rico is now also included?
Puerto Rico is now also,
Included as far as EB5?
I don't actually know of any projects that are going on at the moment there.
no.
There's over
I don't-
1,000 EB5 projects in the country.
Oh.
I would say to stay away from 900 of them, quite frankly. It's just, I
But-
look all the time,
Yeah.
they don't even develop into anything. Just because a project is approved doesn't mean it's really going to even come to fruition. That's why we like these ones where you can touch them.
Exactly.
Phase two.
It is.
Stick with phase 2, phase 3.
Yes, this is what I like because it's not especially where the project is or where the project where is it. The project is the concept exactly. We have something that is already approved for so many EB5. The project exists, is here. There is the half of the project is already done. Exactly, for example, smart vehicle. There is this is the second tower. Yellow stone, this is the first two. So, it's not the first shot.
And another thing is the developer look, even if Smart Brickle is brand new, I look at the developer's history. This could be the 5th project that center has put through. You're like, okay, this is great. We have we have a history here. These guys have had over 500 EB5s approved. I prefer that than guy can't even tell me how many he has approved. He might have 50 filed, but we don't even know, and I sort of tell clients, let's stay away from there. Now, I don't want to put down, I know that we spoke originally about the possibility of you actually creating your own EB5 center. That was what we spoke of. And that, again, I would urge you to look into, I don't even know what the proper word is, lease or rent. Use an existing EB5 center. Pay them to use their center for your project as long as it's an approvable project.
Do you have your own center, or do you collaborate?
Do I have my own center?
No.
I'm strictly an immigration attorney that searches for the right centers, helps the clients get their green cards to those centers. I have created, with my partner, who unfortunately just passed away not that long ago, EB5 centers in Philadelphia, in New Orleans. A lot of people, this was a perfect example. I was involved in, there was an old theater in New Orleans that the city couldn't afford to renovate. And it needed $30 million of funding. So a gentleman went in, set up an EB5 center to renovate that theater. He had the workers, he had everything he would need to do that. He completed it and then sold it to the city. And that was how he paid everybody back, he made his money. So it doesn't always have to be huge, big undertakings, right? They could be small projects. If you're thinking, I don't know what your projects are, but he didn't create his own EB5 center. It was a one-time deal for him. He didn't want to see that thing get demolished, and he put it through an existing center that was certified in that region. Remember, these are regional centers, right? So you can't go to Miami and use a company regional center to do a project in Colorado. You have to go local with who's there. And then, yeah.
What's the processing time to have your own center? About a year?
So a lot of it is the prep, right? You have to have a lot of documentation. You have to have an economic impact analysis done to prove those jobs, right? Job creation. Got to work with a good economist. You have to have a private placement memorandum created through a law firm. That's one of the big expenses there, right? Is paying that law firm to back that PPM that you have to put out there. It's about, I would say it's probably a 2-year process to get that approved. Yeah.
What are the usual rates to lease and work with the center?
I don't know the answer to that. We were speaking about it before, and I think you threw out a number of 20,000 or something like that.
That's a fee to USCIS.
Yeah.
To form your regional center.
Right.
That's the fee.
Right.
If you're doing one project, it's 10,000.
Right.
If you're doing multi-project.
Okay, I thought you were saying that was your fee that because you had contacted.
No, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be what's in it for them, right? They've spent the hundreds of thousands of dollars to get up and running and do their things. If your project looks good and you're going to bring them in on it, that's probably center per center, right?
I've noticed that there are a lot of inactive regional centers.
Yeah, and COVID is responsible for a lot of that. A lot of people had projects.
New York State, 90% is inactive regional centers because they don't have projects.
And if you don't do anything in a certain amount of time, you lose that because you're presenting to immigration, I'm ready to go with this. This isn't something I've been doing 10 years and I want to
So
prove
people
it.
invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, created it, had offices, and they couldn't get the project.
Right.
And,
Yeah. And like I said, COVID really had an impact on this because some of them couldn't even get the workers if you wanted. You couldn't even do the project.
especially New York State.
Yeah, exactly.
They raise the prices.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I'm doing more assisting with the prep of going through that center. And you know, a lot of times the center has their own attorney. They can't force you to use the attorney, but they recommend you use their attorney. I'm not connected to a specific EB5 center, so to speak, which is good because I'm not playing favorites with anybody, and I'll look and say, I don't like this. There was a pie chart. Could you go back to that? I just wanted to touch on that. It's kind of interesting. It was back maybe 3-4 more slides. That one. Yeah, you had it. So I always, when I look at a center, I always look at developer equity, preferred equity, total debt, and what ends up happening is you want that pie chart simply, if you're going to open up your center, and you're going to really try to get your investors from China, from wherever you're going to go to market, you better have a pie chart that is showing a good amount of money from you and your bank making up at least a third of that pie chart, because then we start scratching our heads saying, how much money are they, they have enough skin in the game to really pull this off? Or are they trying to get 25 million of the 30 million from investors? It's wonderful if you can do that because you're not paying any interest on the money, right? That's the whole idea behind this. I touched on that before, but it's all about borrowing at 6% and borrowing at 0. What does those numbers turn out to be in your business model, right? That's going to make it profitable, more profitable for you to do that project. And when I see, and I ask some of these regional centers, talk to me about how this structure looks. And I say, my God, you're borrowing 85% of your money's coming from the investors. I prefer not to do that. Yeah. So these other like what he's put in that brochure, these guys are doing it with or without the EB5 money. In fact, they've only
like especially Yellowstone.
Right.
I did a lot of research on that. That's the private club. People pay millions of dollars to become a club member.
Exactly, correct.
It will be developed. It's already developed.
Of course.
And they have the phase 1 done already, sold out.
Yes.
And they have phase 2 and they have phase 3 coming.
Yes, phase 3 coming, yes.
Kind of dumps this down.
They don't really need it.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Go to the center that doesn't need your money.
Right. That's the best one.
Because it's
but
the best
our
one.
thought process is we don't even like the mezz lender. We need to be just the equity and the primary loan to the development. Because mezz, you're gonna be wiped out if the iffy project, if something happens.
Of course.
You're gonna be the first one to wipe out because primary lender will get his.
We'll take his money first and then.
Of course.
So we come from financial background and banking background.
Sure.
And that's why and plus the brokerage on top of layers, past 25 years, and that's why we think that creating this relationship with EB5 centers, we can, because we don't want to be stuck just in New York.
Sure.
You're allowed to practice law. I mean, you're practicing law in Florida. Are you allowed to work on an EB5 deal in New York, for instance?
I actually am barred in the state of Arizona. Was where I first took the bar. I have an office there, and I lived there for many years. And I moved to Florida, and in fact, immigration law is national. So I can't take your divorce case in Florida. I can't take your litigation slip and fall personal injury case. But immigration is national. The law doesn't change from state to state.
That's what we like, because we have a project might be coming up in Texas or.
Yeah, I do it for everybody and clients all over the country.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Can you explain the situation that you mentioned with smart Rico with you said that you can, when you give the money, you can then use it for an apartment?
You can reserve an apartment, yes. You can do a reservation for an apartment at the same times.
So you're
But
essentially using it like a down payment on an apartment in the building?
it's not a down payment because they cannot put the money, because the money is for the project, for the EB5 project. They cannot put, but they can project to put the money, the developer did it, project to put the money at the end of the EB5 to put on your apartment. And the reservation is done by the money that you commit in the EB5 project.
With the price of the apartment by the end of the EB5, is there a way to get the company to agree that your down payment will be based off of a projected?
So this is the advantage. The price of the apartment that you can have, this is the price at the beginning that you are doing your EB5. Of course, if it's more expensive at the end, it will be. Of course, it doesn't matter for you. You have the price at the moment of the contract.
Oh, so when you put that money for the
Yes.
process, that's price, projected price will lock, you mean?
Correct. So Nexo did it too. I have to check out if there is a EB5 coupon left, but I know that because I was with the developer yesterday. For Smart Vehicle, there is 7 left. Sure.
Yeah, I'm confused about the role the USA citizen. What I have to do?
Okay. So the
I'm not qualified for nothing.
No, I funny. So no, I can explain to you exactly these things because I did it like this. At the beginning, I came in United States with the E2 visa. So the E2 visa, you are a visitor. You can have, depend on your country. I don't know that this one is not my job. You can have for 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, depend. At the beginning, when I'm coming in the United States, I was the visa E2 for 5 years. So you get your visa E2, but you not have a citizenship. What it mean? It means you can, obviously, you cannot vote. It's very difficult to have a loan.
No. Sorry. I said I'm already USA citizen.
Okay.
So what is my role in that project? So what-
You
what
only,
I can do?
so you go in this project and it's an investment in real estate because you're already citizen. And this one is completely different because we can take out completely the immigration status and go there for a real estate investment and take care what is the rentability, the better rentability that you can get with your investment that you want to put. You know? You're welcome. Yeah, sure, sorry.
If you're using the bank loans for your source of funds, is it just that we can give the letter that shows that we're approved for the loan, or do you need it to be for the loss of funds?
I don't, sorry, can you repeat again?
Okay, so if our source of funds was your bank loan,
Yes.
can we submit the letter from the bank that says we're approved for this amount of money, or do we need to be further along in the process where even if we get the money from a bank loan, it has to be in our bank account?
This one, I think that Jeffrey can answer to that question.
I'm sorry.
Yes, no problem. It's a little technique, you know, so.
What was the question? I hope I can answer.
So if your source of funds is through a bank loan, can we use the approval letter as proof of our source of funds, or do we have to have the money in our bank account already and then show that we got that money through a bank?
So I have always done it where the funds are actually there, because the problem is the bank letter could still result in those funds not coming, right? So funds need to be matured and in possession of the investor. So in that particular instance, you have to get that money into escrow, right? Which
Yeah.
I would have to just only with the bank will do this one, it's great. Would be to use the letter to this person plus yeah, so it would be pretty much treated like a mortgage where the money will be used directly to the project. This would be really secure.
so it goes into escrow of the project, right? Because what happens is they can't touch that money until they have the success. Anything access that. So it goes into the sort of
Now with the
What about if we decide to start on
So it's really, really difficult to sponsor yourself, right? Because to say, oh, really, you own the company, you can find a qualified U.S. worker, but you just happen to be
Also now with the private sector businesses
Yeah.
who wanna either seeking to do the investment in America or wanna they grow their businesses having a partner overseas and then do the cross-border business.
Sure.
So that's my specialization.
Good.
And I work recently. I've been trip to the different country. Like I heard that you've been in Istanbul. I was in June there, Turkey. I have a lot of the clients working there.
Oh,
now
amazing.
Yeah, recently. Next week I'm going to Brazil for international client meeting. We also have conference, but lately we have a very good.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Perfect.
In contact.
Okay. Ciao Maria.
It's a good number of clients in the Bangladesh.
Okay.
And I saw that in Bangladesh, I'm originally from Nepal. That doesn't qualify for either even E2 or EB5 because our policy, our country doesn't allow to get money out of the country, certain bar there, so they're not. But I see that the Bangladesh have in the E2 category.
Yes.
And also maybe I think the EB5, I'm not sure.
As this one we have to.
Actually,
Yes.
I see that.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of the client in the Bangladesh who is looking to,
I think I did one.
You did?
Let me remember. Oh, I don't remember. I'm not sure about Bangladesh. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So my thought was we might collaborate with our chamber, and then we can do the seminar conference or seminar, so a little more wider audience, especially international clients, and we can see how we can help our members or the international client to look into and work together.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
So that's why I wanted to share my
Yes, we
contact
can do
information.
some conference here.
Yeah.
It's, again, I'm coming often. I'm coming at least one time a month.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
That's
at
great.
least. I will come in next week because there is another event now over there, the 29. So I'm coming often. It's not so far, Me, I mean, here is 3 hours. It's quick.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's not good. I'm going to France. It's 8-9 hours. It's different,
Yeah.
No, here it's pretty quick. So yes, sure, my pleasure. Of course, we can do more business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So that's why nice to meet you.
Me
Thanks.
too.
I wanted to share my contact.
Yeah, sure.
Let's stay in touch.
Where do you see the advertising?
I saw in the social media.
In the social media?
Yeah, social media.
Yes, yeah.
Great. So I sign up at the link.
Yeah, sure.
That's all the that point.
Always, I try to bring one attorney, one different, because they don't have. I'm working with 3 attorneys in Miami, so always I bring one, and there is one in New York City too, but a specialist from EB5 because it should be a specialist of EB5 because.
Exactly. Yeah.
Last year there is one guy that he was denied, and the fault was from the attorney. He doesn't answer so quick.
Yeah. That's very.
So it's the important part, Yeah.
Oh, I know that. I'm sure nobody else does. Just go into a normal restaurant. It doesn't matter.
Yes, and you can bring.
See you. I'm in touch. Okay.
Me too. Okay.
Good luck. Have a nice day.
Thank you, you too.
That wipes off half of the restaurant costs, right? So we try to come up with something that's not going to be too much. That's still within your skill set that the restaurant can justify. So like waitresses, forget it. Restaurant managers, better. Food and beverage manager, better. Caterers, administrators. Worked in that capacity for 3 years.
So I've worked in accounting.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Very good.
My internship
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Good job, man.
Thank you.
hopefully we can work with. We met in Florida.
Yes.
Oh. Wait.
This one?
So you're Miami.
Yeah.
I've been to Sirhan's office in here.
Oh yeah?
I have a very good friend, Curtis. He works with him. He makes meetups every Wednesday. Oh, so once in a month Wednesdays.
Once a month Wednesday.
Yes. Before he used to make them in downtown Brooklyn. Now
Yeah.
sometimes he makes them to Sirhan's office because of the office that is launched.
Yes.
Yeah. There was the other day the book signed for Sirhan's.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I had another he's Italian, Marco.
Yeah.
He doesn't make events, but he also works with Sirhan's. Yeah. He's here in Hablamos.
He's nice. He's nice.
He's sucking all the
Yes.
good agents from different
Exactly.
companies.
We take it all the way to one and go. Yeah.
I'm gonna add you on LinkedIn, by the way.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing real estate, as a new real estate agent, you'll probably concentrate on Instagram more. Are you concentrating on Instagram more or LinkedIn more?
Instagram. Instagram. We did some advertising in LinkedIn when there was some event like that, or you know, exceptional
You need
things.
some corporate connections like a lawyer,
Exactly.
CPAs,
Exactly. Exactly.
B2B.
Is exactly what we did. CPA, attorney, and we connected CPA attorney to bring the clients, you know.
When you go B2C, you need Instagram.
Yeah.
Basically.
You don't come
Yes, we can
from
yeah.
a country that has
This is my business card.
Oh, okay.
I don't have paper.
Let me take you. What?
Oh no, I was speaking with her.
Sorry.
We do with Trinidad. So we have
Always, I don't know why. Always, I have a problem with it.
Shaking and thought.
But did you guys say that like a decent visa can get you a green card?
You see, always. I don't know. I don't know why. Always is.
So naturally, it will qualify. Now, if you do an EB2 visa, you spend $800,000 and you have 10 employees, you say, wait a minute, that sounds like an EB5. I'm self-petition my home EB5. I'm not going to go through a center. That works. But
This is the
Yes.
there, you say, Jack, I have $100,000, I'm going to buy a coffee shop here with one ticket just to keep myself in the United
Does
States.
it have to be me buying from you? Can I invest into?
So if I own 50% or more,
Okay. Yeah, that's
you
fine.
could buy 50% of your friend's company or create a company.
Yeah, you got
As
it?
long as you qualify. That's the discussion. You want to make sure that
There's a link over here.
Okay.
which is why we say it's money.
Perfect. Get it.
Earns money. They're more likely
How often do you come to New York?
to say, well,
At least one time a month. Yes, one time a month. I will come again. I will come in next week, and the 19th of March too. I already scheduled, and after we go to Canada to do a conference too, and then we go back here too. Yes.
So many states you're licensed in?
For the moment, I have only my license here in United States, but I was doing the license from here, from New York.
States you have a license?
Since
yeah,
5.
5?
Yes.
So the big states and then northeast.
Yes.
Big states and
Yes.
plus northeast.
Yes.
That's the popular one.
Yeah. And I have so many agents. I have so many agents that is. I have some agent
On your
here.
team?
You know, yes, in my team, and there's so many agents here too. We have in West Coast too, of Florida. I just hiring someone in California. So you know, that's good.
Maybe not open with someone like you bring multiple ideas and open the light gives me more.
Yeah.
Like you say, you have multiple agents from different states.
Yes.
So you not necessarily need 50 licenses states.
No, because I send an agent always.
You have an agent.
Yes.
Also, you can diversify. Say one Spanish speaker, one French speaker, one
I speak
Russian
Spanish.
speaker, one Turkish speaker agents.
Yes.
You can have multiple. And then even this, for example, Turkish-speaking agent who has only license in Miami, but they can give you a client, you can refer to the
Referral, yes.
in different states that don't have it, but knows the language. So the person who knows the language build the relationship.
Yes.
And the other one can give you a job.
It's much easier. It's much easier. Very more easy. I saw. I speak 4 languages, but last time I have a Turkish guys, and I have a Turkish agent, so I call the Turkish agent and he did the conference. That's it. You know, in Spanish, Portuguese, in English, in French. I'm French. It's easy because I speak.
Yeah,
I
because
spoke.
I know that when you don't have especially in residential side, you need to have a license to talk with the client.
You're right, yes.
But what happens if, let's say, your agent speaking Turkish language, have license only in Miami, but the client, Turkish client, is in California.
We do it in.
Agent still can talk with that.
He can, but we do it by Zoom.
You do by Zoom.
Yes. Zoom conference. And like this, you can do it. It doesn't matter that you have a yes. I can have a conference with a client that is in New York City, for example, and I don't have the license from New York City, but I am in Florida, and I want to sell to him an apartment in Florida. So at the moment, it's possible. It doesn't matter where you come from. It matters where you sell from.
Yeah, where the transaction, where the
Exactly.
sign the
Yes.
contract.
They
Yeah.
moved to Canada to get the Canadian passport, so then they can now come into US as a Canadian, not living in the
Maybe
US.
we do that.
That's another.
If we don't get like the H1B. Yeah, you can try the express entry. Yeah, the express entry.
Quite frankly, if you're young and you have an education,
A US visa.
I don't mean this I don't mean it like
Oh,
that.
no, thank you. No, maybe some.
Anybody have
That's always an option, you know, and you'll get that passport. And
Right.
in 5 years, or whatever it takes to get that Canadian passport. And now your Canadian passport means nothing. Canadian passport, you do whatever you want to do with that. You come in as a TN, you can come as an EB2, you can come anything. You know? Yeah.
Full body, you know.
So.
What are you majoring? Construction management. So I'm not too worried because construction people, like everyone has a job.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm actually awaiting a reply from a company. It will be good. Yeah, I'm hoping for that.
I have the next question. So let's say I go through the process of getting my friend to do his job.
Are you done with
At
that?
what point can I start my own company? Because I honestly, I don't want to work for another company for like a long time.
So it's just a matter of are you going to work for it or not. There's always this question on BT.
Correct.
Can
You
I
can't
work
like
for
work
my
for
new
yourself.
company? And what I always tell people is, you really shouldn't do that. You should create a company and have an architecture. If you're ever questioning, demonstrate it to employees.
Okay.
It's like when you go to Trinidad. I can't live in Trinidad, but I could go to the restaurant there and employ people all day long. They don't care. But I shouldn't be behind the cash register working. Living in Trinidad, you see, so you would be on OPT doing your thing. If you have a company off the side that was generating revenue, there's nothing wrong with that. You get a taxpayer ID number and you pay the government the income that you
9/11, 9/11.
9/11, 2007, 8, and
Mortgage
then
crisis.
this. I mean, every pandemic crisis was huge.
Yeah.
Florida, no, not much.
Florida, yes, yes.
It went up. They all moved down there.
Half Persian, half half Italian, and half Greek. So we got the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Persian Empire. This girl is going to be really something, huh?
Wow.
Imagine.
Exactly.
But
Or
in the end,
consultant.
consultant,
Everybody's a
manager,
consultant.
consultant.
Yeah.
The problem is they're the most frequently denied because everybody goes down the list and says, oh, well, maybe
Yes.
I can fit under there. And the problem is, if you really clearly don't fit under there, and then you go to the border with it and they deny it, 3 hours ago,
Yeah.
to say that you win. So we say, look, there are none unless they're French. And then I always show them, there's a shortage of pay. You know, everybody says, oh, 100,000, 100,000. I throw that out there, but I just did one that was approved. A guy had 56,000 in a small cleaning company.
Right.
He was from Winnipeg.
Right.
And
I did it with 70.
yeah.
And that's a total investment. Like,
I
that's
did it
not
4
giving
years ago.
time in cash. That's
4
like
years
you've
ago?
invested
Yes, I eat visa.
$50,000,
Yeah,
right?
and,
Like,
and
you bought
Seventy.
there's
head
a way to
office.
do it, and we'll go over.
I don't have more money,
great.
so I did it with that. I say, oh, it's good or
What's more
not.
interesting is
We'll
that
see.
what I always tell
Who's your
people,
lawyer?
let's say
Yes.
you had
That's a good
100,000,
storytelling.
but you
Okay.
didn't really need 56. You didn't really need to spend 100 to get that business up and running.
Right.
I say, okay, so you spend 50.
Hello?
Get you up to 100. If you have your 50 committed into the business right now, and then we come up.
Sorry, say again.
50,000 is there to pay for all advertising.
Okay, call direct. Yes, please call directly the call center. Thank you.
And we give them how it's committed into the business bank account, not into your personal account. Because your personal account means nothing. So I tell people,
Right.
dump as much as you can. Because it looks.
We're planning on migrating it here.
And you don't need a lot of employees.
Like
right?
how many,
You just
2,
have to
3?
have, yeah.
Because
I mean,
we're
like,
thinking of hiring
I
a
always
developer.
say-
There is a comfy, some tea, you can.
Yeah, I need coffee.
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead.
Better than like 1 or 2.
Easy process. This is the E2 visa and the EB5 visa. It is why I decide to do this presentation and explain exactly what's going on with the E2 visa, how it's working, and the EB5 visa, how it's working. That is two things completely different. So fortunately, we have the chance that I have Jeffrey, that is here, as an attorney specialist, attorney for the E2 and EB5 for all the businesses. And he will explain to us at the beginning for the E2, and I will continue with the EB5, and together explain to you exactly the process. Jeffrey, thank you for coming.
Thank everybody for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you. So when we have a small group like this, usually I like to just have an idea as I'm speaking. If I can get just a quick bit of info from everybody on where you're from, because it makes a big difference where your passport's from, and I can focus on other things rather than where are you from?
My name is Victoria. I'm from India.
From India. Azerbaijan.
My name is 𝐂𝐤𝐚. I'm from Azerbaijan. I used to work as a mortgage banker in Azerbaijan, stockbroker in Serbia. I'm here 3 years. I have a lot of friends that are in business. I do commercial loans right now, commercial real estate. So I want to learn these things when the question comes up in my community. I can also speak fluent Russian. So there's a lot of people around me asking about these.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very important.
Absolutely. Canada, France, Georgia, not the state, the country.
Nepal,
Nepal,
Dominican Republic.
Dominican Republic.
Well, I'm not nationally citizen over here, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay.
Ukraine.
It's just good to know as I'm doing Ukraine. Okay. And the reason why I ask is this is just a slide of just a little bit about me and who I am and what I do. But the reason why I ask is because there is, for an E2 visa, there are certain countries that the United States has an agreement with under the Treaty of Navigation and Commerce. And those countries are listed here. Interestingly enough, I happen to be Greek, and we don't have an E2 with Greece, but yet we have it with Azerbaijan, for example. So it just depended on what needs we had with these countries at the time, and we signed this treaty that now permits the E2. So I get a lot of clients that come and say, oh, can you help me? I'm, for example, from India, and we don't have an E2 visa with India, and we have to find alternatives. But yet, you can see we have them with some very, we have it with Senegal, we have it with Togo. It's just, there's really no rhyme or reason. I myself am always looking at this list because it's just strange how many different countries are on there and ones that aren't represented. But also, one side note, if your spouse has, people don't think about this, if your spouse has one of these passports and you don't, you can still use it. So there's a lot of cross-cultural marriages these days. So if you were, for example, we don't have this with Dominican, but if you were from, if you married somebody that had a passport from another Latin, from Colombia, for example, you could actually come in, even if it was your business and your investment, by using the Colombian passport to get you on that E2 visa. So, enough with that. Okay, so what we do is, what is an E2 visa, right? I mean, quickly, an E2 visa was set up to do, essentially, promote employee, create jobs, bring more taxpayers into the U.S. And by doing that, it's a very quick way to get into the U.S. rather than EB5. So a lot of times people will come in on an E2, get their status, and then go into the EB5 once they get their feet wet, or depending on what they're looking to do, if they're simply out of the country, wait for the EB5 if they don't have the E2 visa. But it's sort of a natural, have a lot of clients on E2s that go into an EB5 after. The E2 is a visa where you come into the U.S., you can bring your spouse, your children with you, you'll get a social security number, you get the right to live in the United States, depending on the country that you come from. Typically, the E2 is between 3 and 5 years, depending on which country we have the agreement with. And you come in for 5 years, and then it's renewable as long as you maintain a business that's functioning, that has some employees, and is generating enough money for you to prove that you're not a marginal business, which is a business that makes just a minimum amount of money every year and is not considering you to be an investor. An interesting thing on the e-visas is that if you have a business, you can bring workers from that country that you have your visa with to work for you directly in your company as managers or specialized employees or that sort of thing. So it's good because people say, oh, I want to bring X, Y, Z with me to come and work because he knows what's going on and I'm not sure I can find a U.S. worker for that. They can come in, directly work for you under your visa and nobody else. So that's kind of a nice little thing there. Went through that. So basically what happens is, this is probably a little more technical, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it here, but you'll get a visa, for example, for 5 years. And each time you come in on an E2 visa, your period of stay is in fact 2 years. So every time you exit and come in, they'll give you a stamp for 2 years. That's what we call an I-94 card. I'm sure everybody knows what that is. And that gives you a 2-year time on an E2. You could essentially get 7 years, because in the 5th year, if you exit and come back in, more likely than not they would stamp you, give you another 2 years. And if the visa falls off and expires, you're still in status on the E2 and you can stay in the US without any problems. If you exit the US, you give up that status, and then you must pass through the embassy to get your E2 renewed again. But in essence, it's really a 5-year visa with a 7-year stay, depending on the country. For Canada, that's how that would work. Again, you can bring your spouse, your children with you. Kids can go to college. Your spouse can work under an E2 visa, which is a good thing because certain visas don't permit that. But because you're actually creating jobs in the US, your spouse can work anywhere. So I have people come in all the time, and their spouse is a banker in France. They want to come to the US and work, and they say, "But Jeff, I can't get a job at a bank." And I say, "Well, fine. Have your wife buy a nail salon for $100,000, and then you could go work without sponsorship at HSBC Bank for $200,000 a year." And they're like, "That's a good idea," because what ends up happening is trying to find sponsorship, as a lot of you know, is not an easy thing. Engineers and technical workers and these kind of people that aren't entrepreneurial, they need to be sponsored to work. So the E2, if your spouse can qualify, gives you the right to go work for a company without any issue whatsoever. And you're applying for that job as someone who doesn't need sponsorship. Personally, I think it makes a huge difference in your application process. So, what do we usually need on an E2 visa? The basics are, and this is something whether you buy a business or whether you create a business. So everybody thinks you have to buy a business for $100,000. That's the fastest, easiest way to do it. But you can also create a business. We were just speaking a little while ago about that very same thing. You have an idea, you have some money, and you want to create a business. You can do it. You literally have to set up a corporation, right? Get your corporate documents together, fund that company with, we like to say, $100,000 minimum, and start spending that money on those items that will qualify you to get that business up and running, right? So let's just take a quick example and say you're going to open up your own hair salon. So people do this and they say, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to come down, Fabrice finds you the lease. You go and you shop, you find the space. For your lease, you're going to need first, last, and security, right? It's probably $15,000 right there because your rent's $5,000 a month for your hair salon, and you start with that, right? $15,000, then you have to buy. Maybe you have to do some interior work. It could be $30,000 or $40,000. You need sinks, you need chairs, you need whatever, another $30,000. The paint, the advertising, the sign out front. Before you know it, you're at your $100,000. And now what you need to do is get your workers in place, be what the embassy calls nearly operational, which means close to opening or open. And then we send the file off to the embassy. You have your interview. The interview, depending on the state, the country that you're from, could go very quickly, or there could be a long delay. France right now is almost 9 months. There's a little hang up there, but it's usually about 3 months in France, at maximum 2 months. And now, last week I had a client who just got his interview. It was a 9-month wait. So what we do, what you can do at any embassy, is you can get your appointment and then log in every day, try to find it, you can change it. There's always cancellations, and then you can back that up. So people call me screaming all the time. I say, no, don't shoot the messenger. Just wait. You can get in, log in, and you can have your interview accelerated much faster. And then after that, 2-3 days, they do a background check through Interpol. They check to make sure you're not a criminal or whatnot, that you haven't overstayed and there's no issues, and you'll get a visa. The visa comes 5 years from Canada, for example. Come into the US, go right to the Social Security Administration, get your Social Security number, because without that in the US, there isn't much you can do. And then start building your credit that way, and get yourself operating and running your business. And you can bring children with you, no parents, but spouses and children under 21 years old, not 18. It's a big question because people say, does it end at 18 when they're a minor or when they become a majority? And the answer is they are of majority at 18 in the US, but they can stay on their parents' visa until they're 21. So that's how it goes. You had a
Well,
question?
question.
I had a question. For example, you said that in France the delay are longer, and do you think that, for example, I can go to Belgium to
So-
the embassy?
So I've been sending people to Switzerland, actually, because of this odd delay that they have. No one's telling us why that is, but if you were really pressed, let's say you had a deadline for some reason, then I know that Barbados oftentimes takes people, you just have to ask, give a special request why you want to go there.
Okay.
But the law says you should go, you must go to the embassy located in the country of where your passport's from. So Colombians, I have a lot of, we're in Miami, we have a lot of Latin American clients, and those clients from Colombia are waiting over a year and a half. And at this point, it's, I have to start shopping in other forums to try to get them interviews faster. But typically, Canada, 60 days, you have it. France, normally 60 days. That's about what it is for most countries. Because they understand you've opened a business, but now you have to wait a year to get your visa. How do you keep that business functioning? How do you oversee it and direct it, which is a problem.
I guess it's a question for both real estate and law. It just like came to me because you have to have a rented office, for example, right? Because I know like in Canada we have where you can live and work, so you could write it off. Is that something that you could do, where like you get an apartment?
What they truly want, you can do that legally. No, you can do that legally. But the problem is that immigration wants this to be, these laws were written well before remote work, well before everybody could make $1 million just doing nothing at home and opening up an Amazon store, right? So
Why not?
It's hard because we're trying to put today's practices into requirements from 50 years ago. And so everyone's like, I don't need an office. And I'm like, look, I know you don't, but do me a favor. Go get an office for $1,000 a month in a building, in an executive suite, with your name on the door, and do that, and get that set up. And if things change later, you can do away with it. But they want to see it, and there's a box that they check. Does this business have an office? Because if it doesn't, then it isn't serious. And then where are the employees going to go to work every day? And where's the responsibility going to be if everybody's just a phone call away? We know that you can run a business this way, but immigration, unfortunately, is still in the Stone Ages, and they want to see a commercial lease. It doesn't have to be a $10,000 a month lease, but again, it should be relative to the business that you're presenting to immigration. If you're going to open up a real estate office and you're planning on having 50 agents, you better have something bigger than this, right? Because they want to see the lease, they want to see the floor plan. We take photos of the inside to demonstrate that you've secured something reasonable for the project.
And the employees, so for example, if you open up, like you get a lease in Miami, can you hire remote workers all over America, or does it have to be in Miami?
Yeah, for sure. No,
so
that's
go
a
to
good
the office.
question. No, you can, let's say you want to live in Miami and you're going to have an office there and you're going to go to it principally, but you have 3 workers in San Diego. It's not a problem at all.
That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's a pretty common thing, actually. Not your workers don't have to be. So that comes to the next question. The EB5, we're going to get into that on the workers that you have to have. But on an E2, there's no hard line rule what you need, right? You're supposed to have enough workers that will suffice for that type of business. So your business, other businesses may say, look, I only need two or three people. I say, sure, get 1 full-time guy, 2, 3, 4 part-time people, put them on the payroll and present that, and you can now say I've created 4 jobs with this little investment. And sure.
I have a question about the amount of investment.
Mhm.
I will give an example in real estate, but it can also be applied to all kinds of businesses. Let's say you come up with the pocket money, 1 million, my own investment, and I get 2 million loan for it, for the rental investment. And let's say by the time mortgage is paid off, there's an inflation, like a amount of the equity is high. Now my equity is not 1 million, it's 1.5 million because of the equity. So when we apply for the visa, we consider initial 1 million or my total equity only 1.5 million?
It depends. It depends on business if you're bringing things in. So this is a very technical question. I'll spend a few minutes answering it for you. But first of all, before we get there, let me tell you that I get this question, and so does he, 100 times a week. Oh, I want to buy a condo for $1 million. Does that qualify?
No.
And it's not a commercial entity. So
No.
in the end, you can buy a $10 million home, you won't get a visa. You can buy an $80,000 coffee shop and get a visa. So
Yeah.
it's sounds crazy, but that's what it is. So people that are only driven by real estate and don't want to own a coffee shop, I say the solution to that is to buy a multi-family dwelling
Yes.
that has, I do this often, especially in Miami, it has to have enough units for you to demonstrate to the embassy that you need to be there. So 4 units,
Oh yeah.
it's a little risky. If you get 6, 7, 8 units, now you say, look, I have 8 rent rolls, I have maintenance, I have painting, I have this and that.
Parking, backyard.
Yeah, a quadplex,
Yes.
a duplex
Kinds
is
of
not
problems.
really a commercial enterprise in the sense, with 8 units, 10 units, you're gonna have employees. They might be 1099 employees. In US, we have these subcontractors, right? They're not W-2 tax-paying employees where you're paying tax on their behalf. They're 1099 contract workers. So you might have a maintenance guy that's on your books and you're using him for $2,000 a month to fix all the little problems, but that's an employee. You might have a girl that does the bookkeeping for you every month, but you understand, you better have many units
Yeah.
because they're just not going to buy the fact that 4 units requires you to go down to Miami and live there on EB2 investment.
Yeah, exactly. You're acting like a property management company, you know, so it's an activity. It's not the building, because real estate, if you want to apply for a visa to buy a real estate, you cannot. It's not possible. You cannot, like he say, like Jeff say, you can buy 10 apartments, 20 apartments, it doesn't matter. The bet, if you have the job like a property manager and you can demonstrate that you are to be there to manage and handle all the units, you can do an activity by that.
So what we do, property management's a pretty big thing in Miami because there's so many part-time residences there. So they always turn their property over to Fabrice, handles probably 100 properties every month. That's a whole job in itself. So I tell people, look, buy a small property management company, take those contracts into your company that you're going to buy now. That may or may not qualify you, and then you can buy properties, put them in that portfolio that you're managing. But again, you've spent that $100,000 to get that property management company. You're going to have a few employees, and then you can acquire your real estate too.
Yeah, correct.
Because unfortunately, like I said, just buying $2 million properties, as crazy as it sounds,
It does
does nothing for you on a visa.
So what you just said now, it brought up another question, also again applicable to any type of business. So you say you'll have 1099 employees, 1 accountant, 1 landscaper, 1 something. So you're saying that instead of having 1 full-time, it's better to have, for example, 10 or 20 part-time, those kind of 1099?
You can, but at one point, what they're going to look at is that business that you have a 1099 business, or should it be a W-2 business? Meaning, if you have engineers, if you're an engineering firm, you need W-2 salaried employees. If you have a hair salon, every one of those chairs is a 1099 employee, and they know that. So they accept it more on a hair salon than they would a bakery. I mean, your baker is probably a full-time baker that works every day. Your waitresses are probably waitress staff W-2 employees, right? So it just depends on the business, and is it reasonable to have everybody be a 1099 or not? Restaurants, it's really not reasonable. Nail salons, hair salons, certain types of businesses that are inherent to subcontractors, they have no issue with it. And to bring a more definitive answer to your question, 20 full-time people or 20 part-time employees versus 5 full-time, again, it would come down to, are you trying to mask something to look like you have more? I always tell people, you're just starting out in a small business. We had this discussion with her. She said, I don't really know how many employees I need. I said, look, get 1 full-time. This is another thing. It doesn't have to be a $50 an hour employee. You could have a full-time worker at minimum wage 2 part-time people at minimum wage, and that's good. It's better to have 3 or 4, 1 full-time, 3 part-time, than say just 2 full-time employees, right? And it also depends on the wage. So I'd rather have 4 part-time workers at $50 an hour than 1 full-time worker at $15 an hour, right? And this is all about balancing this file when they look at it. I mean, I prepared the last 23 years hundreds of these things, and I know what works and what doesn't work, and we usually have to look at what is this business that you're trying to get in there under, and then we have a better idea. So that, because with this visa, there are no hard, fast lines. When you read the requirements under the FAM Act, it will say the business shouldn't be marginal. What does marginality really mean, right? It's enough to have the investor be able to support himself in the United States and be considered an investor. But what does that really mean? That means you better have $75,000 a year in your pocket from that business, maybe 60, 65 if it's a brand new business. But if you go to the embassy after 5 years and you're making $40,000 a year, there's a very good chance they're going to say, you're not really an investor. We're not giving you your visa again. So I always like to have this number 60, 70, 80,000, and you're usually qualifying for renewal every time. So, sure. Let's see where we are here. Yeah, so this is always a good one. The money, this is going to carry over to the EB5 too. Where there's problems, right? Where there are potential problems, is people come to me all the time and say, oh, let's use Italy as an example, because I'm Italian and I'm not going to offend anybody if I say this, because this is always how it is in Italy. They say, I have $200,000. Okay, where'd it come from? Well,
you know.
This guy, yeah, you know, and I say, yeah, I know, but immigration doesn't know, so we got to clean this. Not clean it, that's not the right way. We have to prove that it's clean money, that it derived from something that was legal. And how did you do that? Well, I sold the house, everybody, from France, from Italy. They sell their house, they get $100,000, they have a notaire, pass the money to their personal account, then it comes either to my trust account or to their account in US, and we follow that trail of funds, and it's legitimate. Where you run into problem is when it's all cash. Now, cash is okay if you've deposited it into your bank, and the funds are mature for a period of time, where there's no issues with it, you've paid taxes on it, the banks are aware the money's in there. It's hard when you have money that is not traceable, because this is a very big thing for them. They want to see where that money came from and show me the history of it. I've had gifts, so gifts work. A lot of young people getting E2 visas now, they don't have money, so their parents give them the $100,000. So they'll say, oh, my parents transferred $100,000 in my bank, and then I transferred it to your escrow account. So I'm a business attorney as well, so I do a lot of closings for these businesses and that sort of thing. So I constantly have money coming into my client trust account. So when I send that to the embassy, first thing they say is, show me where the money came from the parents. I don't care that he got it from them, where did they get it from? So now we have to say, oh, they sold a lake house 5 years ago. Show me the documents, show me it went into the bank account. It's a headache. And when you have to do this for $100,000, it's one thing, but under the EB5, and we'll talk about it, you have to do it for 800 or $1 million. It could be even more challenging. I unfortunately have been subject to some EB5 candidates that were unable to prove the source of their from, some Eastern European clients that had some money come in, and they told me they sold paintings and they sold their cars and so that. And I put it in the file, that that's where it came from, and then the embassy says, or USCIS, if it's an EB5, says, show me the sale, show me the bill of sale from the painting. Certainly you sold a painting for $200,000. It was insured, or you had paperwork. So you have to demonstrate. This is all about making sure that legitimate funds are brought into the US, and they're not funds from countries or places that are not properly cleared, is the word you would use.
I own a property back in my country, and I've been here, let's say, for 5 years.
Okay.
And I'm renting that property out. I'm collecting cash money.
Uh-huh.
So when I decide to prove that cash money that I have in my account,
You're going to give me 2 years worth of bank. You're going to give, how I would do it, I would say, He has it rented for $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
Here's 3 bank statements throughout the year showing that. Here's some more bank statements from back here showing rent coming in back here. And you can demonstrate that those funds were built up in his savings account to get us that $100,000 by $3,000 a month rent here, $3,000 there, and $3,000 there, or whatever the numbers are. But we just have to demonstrate it. The majority of the files, that section right there is the thickest because not everybody just has a clean $100,000 sitting in the bank that they got from their savings account. Usually they sold something. Usually it was a gift. It could also be a loan. A lot of people don't think of that. But let's say you had an asset in your country and you didn't want to sell the house, but you didn't have the money. You could go to the bank, get a loan. You just have to include the loan documents that show you received a loan secured by an asset that's in your name. And that's fine too. So you don't necessarily have to have it in your savings. You could borrow it from the bank and hold your asset. That qualifies as well. All right, where are we here? We got into this, about $100,000 is roughly the number. I just sent one out last week to an embassy in Canada. It was a last month, it was a $65,000 investment, and they got their visa. But why I was comfortable doing that is because some businesses just simply don't cost $100,000 to get up and running. They're good businesses, but they don't have to invest $100,000. So what I tell people, if you can do it, is you spend $65,000 on rent, inventory, equipment, everything you need to be set up, but you're $35,000 short. Put another $35,000, $40,000, $50,000 in the business bank account, not your personal bank account, and commit it to the company and say, these funds are for first couple of weeks of payroll, that's going to be another 10 or 15. I'm probably going to buy a business truck or a vehicle for that company, but I'm not buying it yet, and I'm going to do some Google ads, and I'm going to do some marketing, and my $50,000 is committed. Now I can tell the embassy, collectively, they've invested $100,000, but today they have $65,000 to get where they need to be, but there's another $35,000 there that's going to be used for, and that works. Because some people say, Jeff, I just don't need to spend $100,000. I'm up and running with 50 grand. Okay, try to commit the other 50 into the business bank account, and that usually works with what they need. We generally covered that. Let's look what we have here.
Any question?
Yeah, questions. That's always the best way to do it because now we can get to the root of it. Tell me.
So yeah, I heard that with the E2 visa, for example, okay, as a French citizen, I want to import cheese, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I became an investor, and then I can employ a French candidate because I'm doing trade between France and the US.
We don't talk a lot about the E1.
Okay, maybe there's an E1.
But that's an E1.
It's an E1.
Basically the same premise, but you have to demonstrate. The problem with the E1 is imagine everything I just told you about the E2. It works like exactly the same.
Yeah.
However, you must demonstrate substantial and ongoing trade between the two countries. So the last one I did was with a group out of Israel, because Israel doesn't have an E2, but they have an E1, and they export stone into the United States. But they had a history of doing that without a visa for several years. So they qualified under that ongoing and substantial trade because I showed they're importing Israeli stone to the US for the last 5 years. If you said, oh, I want to bring cheese in, but I haven't done it yet, I would submit it more as an E2, that you're going to sell cheese in the US, you just have to be getting it from France. If you said, oh, my family's been importing cheese and selling it for years, we're going to open up a little subsidiary in New York, that's more of an E1 than it is an E2, because you're going to be using that trade as the basis for the visa, rather than trying to do an E2 to, do you understand the difference? It's a gray line there, but just seeing so many of these over the years, that's more of an E1. People do this with wine. We have people that sell wine and they bring wine in all the time. Yeah, they're distributing wine. So that's more of an E1 because they don't own a wine store, a retail store that's selling wine. That would be more of an E2, right? So it doesn't really matter. It just actually depends on which country you come from, because some countries, like Greece, for example, is only an E1. We don't have an E2. So a lot of clients, I see my last name and they call me and they say, oh, it's a Greek, and they call me and they say, what can I want to do? I say, you have to demonstrate that you've had trade. Yeah, we've been selling olive oil in US for 50 years, my family. Okay, then we can use the E1 that way. But they can't buy a Greek restaurant and come in on an E2. You see?
So it can be also for services, for the E1, sorry.
Yeah,
It can be for
interestingly
services
enough.
too, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
this is fun to do this. Everybody expects it to be something tangible, right? It's like, no, no, no. You can actually import services in a way.
Yeah.
You have a company maybe down in I just did this with a guy in Argentina. They had a company in Argentina that actually was providing services to a company in the US. Was doing that for years. That's an E1 because it's trade, not of stone, not of olive oil, but of services, and it works. Yeah.
Going back to a couple of slides, I just kind of want to understand a little bit more for Canada in terms of like all the documentations, like banking, paperwork,
Sure.
all that stuff.
Sure.
So you would do that in your own country, like in Canada, or would you do it again, like coming in, and then you would open all that up, and then you would file?
So
and then-
typically it works like this, and I'll go. We're okay on time.
Yeah, sure, sure.
The process in a nutshell. Everybody does it different, but this is how I've been doing it, and to me it works the best. Let's say you're starting up a company rather than buying one.
Yeah, starting.
So you would set up the LLC or the corporation first and foremost.
You could do that in your
Create
own
the
country,
entity.
because that's online.
Yeah, for sure. Depending on your partnership structure and whatnot, you have to know all that. You put it together, you set up the company. Then you obtain the proper documentation from the IRS to be able to employ people, to open a bank account, those certain things that you need to the IRS. And then you now have a registered company with all the necessaries to open up a bank account. You have to be physically in the United States to open up a bank account, so you come in.
So the IRS stuff can be done at home. It doesn't need to be done in
Yes,
US. Okay.
yes. The only thing so far that needs to be done now is opening up that
That
bank account in the US.
Okay.
Get your bank account open. Fund that bank account with your money that you're going to invest.
Right.
And start your investment. Come on in. If you're from Canada, no one's going to ask you any questions. You have 6 months. You come in. For example, you need an office. If Fabrice goes, takes my client, shows them businesses for sale, offices, whatever they need, he gets them set up with an office. And then they start with dispensing the money. Whatever your project is, whatever your business that you're trying to create is, you have to spend that money. You do all that. When we get close to being operational, we package it all. And that's when I say to you, I need the bank statements from where the 100,000 came from. I need all your invoices of the things you just bought. Show me your list of employees. Give me some names of who you're hiring. Maybe they've been on payroll for the first 2 weeks because you're actually open and operating. Let me see your licenses for your business. Boom, boom, boom. Put it all together and we send it off. Throughout that process, I'm like on the phone with my clients all the time because they're like, Jeff, will this work? Is this the right way to do that? Should I buy the car in my name or the name of the company? Will that qualify? So when I get hired, it is like a really hands-on situation for like a month and a half. It's really every day on the phone trying to get us to that point because you don't want to go do things that aren't going to qualify.
Right.
And then you've spent money that I can't even use because you didn't do it correctly, right? And so that's why I like to handle things from the beginning to the end. Before you go setting up companies, I've had this happen too. People structure their companies incorrectly. It's good for what they're trying to do, but it's not applicable to the E2 visa. So we say, wait a minute, you've set it up and you only own 40% of that company, you're the one getting the visa. The law says you have to have 50% or more of that company to qualify. You could have a $1 million company. If you own 30% of it, you can't get your visa. Right? So people don't know all the ins and outs, and typically setting up the company isn't a very costly thing. There's a right way to structure things and to do all that like we spoke of.
Right.
But nothing really needs to be done until you start. You could say, well, I don't even need to be in the US to spend my money. Arguably, you don't need to be. And it's just a matter of what's practical for you to be there,
Right.
to get that started in doing. But there's no requirement that you're physically in the US to start doing those things.
Right.
Absolutely not.
Especially with a digital company, it's a little bit more.
Yeah, it's not like you're setting up. We use a bakery all the time, but everybody
want the bakery. Yeah. So let's go and continue with the difference that there is on the Visa E2 and EB5. That the people that they was interested for the EB5, and you will can ask the question to Jeffrey as well. So for somebody that they don't know me, I'm Fabrice. I'm working with 𝐂𝐤𝐚 𝐂𝐤𝐚 here in United States in Soho. And I'm a specialist in the E2 and EB5. I'm working only on the business. And we are the office. I'm working before in France. Of course, you can recognize by my accent, but I speak Spanish. So, of course, in Miami. So, and I'm working for 15 years ago in the financial for the group Life, Swiss Life in France, in Switzerland, and then Luxembourg, and in Belgium. So starting in the United States here for 4 years ago, I have my team and I am in Miami, located in Miami, in the 5445 and Collins Avenue, just on the beach. So if you come in Miami, you're welcome. So this is exactly where I'm coming from, and this is the team that we have today. We are 22 people on my brokerage in Miami, and there is some specialists, me for the businesses, and the EB5, and another one for the rental, and the other one for the rental community, and another one that there is 2 assistants that they can, if you working with us, you will have my assistant that is calling you and do a research for all the businesses for the E2, because there is 2 differences that we have to know. The E2 visa, you are never US citizen. You are always a visitor. This is very important to know. And the other side, the EB5, because so many people say, oh, it's a lot of money. It's not so a lot of money. You must know only what you want. This is the more important things. So at the moment that you know what you want, you know how much you have to invest. It's not a lot of money, it's not a cost, it's an investment. You have to know that. So one thing, on the E2 visa is an investment as well, but on the EB5, it is an investment. But here is the system to buying your green card, because you are sure at the moment that you are approved, and we will see a little more deeper. When you are approved with the EB5, you are sure to have the conditional green card for 2 years, and after the renewal after the 2 years for 10 years. But I think that is 5 years and 10 years after, I guess. So, and after the 10 years, of course, you can do the renewal, whatever you want. So only that the basic things to have the comparison of the EB5 and the E2 visas. This is 2 things completely different. Like Jeffrey was telling us, for the E2 visa, you are buying a business or you are doing a business, you invest in the business, and it is exactly what he said. You can start it with $65,000, we can start it for $1,000, $150, $200, $500, $1 million, it doesn't matter. The matter is exactly the concept. You have to get all the checklists, you have to, all the check, and you can get your E2 visa. I think it's more easy to have an E2 than an EB5.
Sure it is.
So, and there is so many people that they want the green card, but they're starting to come here in the United States with the E2 because it's the easy process. I think you can have, I remember I get my E2 visa because I came in the United States with the E2 visa. I came with in 2 months. So it's so quick. You know,
usually people go from an E2 to an EB5.
Correct.
Because what happens is their children will age out. So they say, my kids are 17, 18, 19. The E2 is expiring.
Exactly.
I need an EB5 because everybody can get a green card if I do it now. So then they move off of the E2 to the EB5.
Exactly. So the advantage that you have, by the way, of the Visa E2 or the EB5, it doesn't matter, because if you have your family, everybody, of course, children less than 21 years old, have the visa as well. So you can come in with your husband. If you're not married, you have to marry. And after all your children less than 21 years old have the visa. It's exactly the same process for the EB5. There is no difference. The only difference, this is the process. With the E2 is an investment in a business, and the EB5 is completely different. There is an EB5, it was a process that is starting in 1990. And at the beginning was for $500,000. And I will explain to you exactly the process after, because the government put the program down in 2021. and they don't want to renew the EB5 until they solve the problem that there is. Because in 2021, the USAS realized that there is a lot of problem with the EB5. There was not enough time that they approved the E526E, and it's not very quickly like that, they say. So they have a lot of suit. So what's happened? They decided to put down the program in 2021 and started another program in 2022. And the bad thing it is that for $500,000 that he was to invest before, they passed the program at $800,000. This one I will explain to you, and maybe Jeffrey can explain to you much better. The difference that you have with the E2 visa and the EB5 is we put the investment for 150, for the E2 100. There is no amount for the E2. So I think that everybody understand that. But the thing that it is the comparable that you can have with the E2 and the EB5, see, the E2 you can never get the green card. It must be clear. You can renew your E2 whatever you want, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, but never you will get the green card. The difference that there is with the EB5, again, that I was telling you before, that you get your green card, and there is some approval last month. We get an approval for the E526E in 1 month. I will explain to you quickly why, because there is different program. In the EB5, you have the rural program, you have the other program, so there is more approval in the rural program. Sorry, my accent, if there is something that you don't understand, you can, there is no problem. So, like this, why I suggest to everyone that the good thing to invest, also in the E2 visa and in the EB5, is in Florida. Why in Florida? That you can see after the pandemic, the Florida was the state that it was open, the first state open. And the 22, I don't have the number for the 23 yet, but in 22, there was 1,217 people daily coming in Florida.
Moving.
Exactly.
Moving to Florida.
Moving to Florida.
Maybe it's the same 820 that are leaving New York.
So, and why? Yes, so there is Florida and Texas. This is the first state that it was very nice to invest because the people. So, why? There is a lot of companies that are moving in Florida. I don't speak always, I speak always for Miami because I'm localized in Miami. I know very well the city and I know very well what's happened exactly here. So here, the comparison why. When you do an investment, also for the E2, but you have to know that the EB5 as well. Why? The EB5 is an investment. You don't have a lot of rentability. You don't expect 8%, 9%, 10%. If you want 8%, 10%, 9% on an investment, you have to be an investment really in the real estate by yourself with a company and blah, blah, blah. You know, don't expect, if you are doing an EB5, it's for the green card because the rentability is 2%, 3% maximum. But the advantage that you have today, because before it was not working like that, before all the EB5 was with a Citibank account. Today, all the EB5 is mandatory, is a real estate development. So what the company did, they do a system, and you will see at the end, with the real estate and the EB5. So like that, and you can see on the brochure that I put on the old seat, there is a rentability that is a little better. But we are not here to talking about the rentability about the EB5 because it's not the goal. You know what I mean? The goal, if you want to do the business and rentability by the visa E2, you can. It's another process. So only to say to you, because in Florida, of course, 0% for the state tax, New York City, 882, and California, more, 1230. So that one, of course, there is a lot of millionaire that is coming here, and the investment option that we can see for the EB5 and the E2, it is here. So the E2, like I was telling you, you have to buy or to create a business. My brokerage is here. We did with my assistant a lot of research for the people that they want to move here in the United States and immigration status by the visa E2. for the businesses, for the client that they want to invest in the E2 visa and when coming with the E2 visa. But again, by the way, if you have some client that they want to move quickly in the United States, also if they have the money, 500, 1 million, it doesn't matter, you know. So the better way and the more quick way, this is the visa E2. Because you have to find a business, you go to the ambassador over there. I don't know how long there is the appointment right now.
There's also an issue where you're actually coming from. So for example, there are certain countries where there's a long wait time on what's known as a priority date. So if you get your 526 approved, but you from mainland China, now they've made some modification to this, but it's just purely an example. India has these issues with a lot of family sponsoring and whatnot. You could be 7, 8, 9 years back before you could file your 485. If you happen to come from a country that has the E2, you can do this in parallel and still be in the U.S., living your life, waiting for your date to come for the EB5 to get you that green card. So just as a that's.
No, it's very important because this is two concepts completely different.
You know, you have an immigrant visa category and a non-immigrant visa category. Student visas, E2 visas, J visas, those don't naturally lead to an immigrant status, which is a green card. The EB5 is on this side, it naturally leads to a green card. That's sort of the differentiate the two a little more clearly.
Correct. So this is exactly the EB5 basic process. Like I was telling you, in 1990, it was only Citibank account investment, and they go after under 21 to the real estate development. So like I was telling you just here, so the EB5 was created in 1990, and the goal was to create a job. Only a job for the investment. So, like we know after in 2021, yes, because from 90 to 2021, it was China and India that there is a lot of EB5 process, and so like I was telling you just before, the government don't take really the thing that they say at the beginning, and they don't give the approval so quickly. So there is a lot of suit, and they're starting them to put the program down in 2021. So it was $500,000, and they begin under 22 when they're starting again the process. They are past the process to $800,000. So today is $800,000, I guess.
Yeah, because what happened was 500,000 was really accessible. They got such a backlog. They couldn't process them all fast enough. So they're like, if we raise it, now we're going to get half the number of applicants. So they could speed up the process and give it. Some people waiting 5, 6, 7 years
exactly
for their EB5 to be approved,
yeah,
because they were just flooded with investors. So they raised it to 800. It's going to come back down. We don't know when, but at one point today, it's actually depending on where you do the investment. Go ahead.
I have a question. Metropolitan city is 1,050,000, right?
So it's interesting. There's what's known as a targeted employment area or a rural area and a non-targeted employment area. So your investment is different depending on where you go. So if we go up outskirts of Schenectady, New York, more likely than not, that's going to be a rural area. You're doing it at the lower number.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in Manhattan, more likely than not, it's not a targeted employment area. But interestingly enough, if you self-petition on an EB5 and you want to open up a restaurant, for example, and you know you have a $3 million budget to do that, I had a gentleman do an EB5 and wanted to do it in Los Angeles, and it changes monthly. I actually contact the city, and there's certain people that you go through to see, is this considered a TEA or not? And Los Angeles was, because during that time, unemployment was really high, and you can't just say, oh, it's never going to happen in Manhattan. So, you know,
especially shifts will go
it
through right now.
changes all the time depending on where it is. I mean, look, a little small town is always going to be targeted employment, but some of the big cities sometimes will qualify, even if you don't think it will. The amount is lower from, it's 1,050,000 versus 800. So
Yeah, but the thing that it is, so today is essentially is real estate project development. But like what you say, Jeffrey, yes, if you are a restaurant and you invest 1 million in the restaurant and you have to create 10 jobs in the first year, you can apply for EB5 as well. It's not yes, it's not.
Yeah, it's a self-petitioning EB5.
Correct.
So, but what ends up happening is, so there's two ways to go down this road. You could go to an approved EB5 center, which has already been approved from USCIS, to issue green cards based off of an investment. They've proposed their project to immigration, and they've approved it. And they say, yes, this, I was involved in one here on 47th Street in New York many years ago. It was a live-work hotel with residents there, and it was an approved EB5 project from a group based out of Florida. And basically, they waited there a year and a half, 2 years to be approved. And what that means for them is they can now take investor funds into their project, use it for developing that project, and you'll get a green card from investing those funds. If you don't go into that project, you can do it yourself. The rules are slightly different, but you can invest the same amount of money in a targeted employment area, $1 million. You could go in, build a beautiful restaurant. You have to have your 10 full-time U.S. workers over a certain amount of time. You have to prove it's more on you.
Yeah.
When you go into the center,
yeah.
you literally write a check and sit back, and your money does all the work because it's in an approved center already. You get your green card a little bit faster, and there's less risk for you to produce, rather than knowing that these projects that Fabrice has selected, that he's showing you, are good solid projects in Miami that more likely than not are not going to fail. The project on 47th Street did not fail. It was sold out in 3 weeks.
Yes, correct.
So, you know, what you want to stay away from is the amusement park idea in the middle of Alabama somewhere, or some state that you know, is going to put an amusement park there, and they've got an approved EB5 center. But because the center's approved, and you go give your $500,000, your money is still at risk. If that project does not produce, the problem that you have is you're going to get your 2-year green card. You're going to move your family, everybody in school, then that project is going to fail. And if it does, you don't get the conditions removed to demonstrate that you have your 10 full-time U.S. workers, and those people end up losing not only their money, but their green card.
Exactly.
That's why I have clients call me and pay me to do due diligence on suitable EB5 investment opportunities. He as well. He gets calls and say, find me things that we know work. We try to stay in cities that are viable. We like where, you know, EB5 investment is an interesting thing because what you want to stay away from, and Fabrice has sort of handpicked some of these investments, is you don't want to invest into a project where 90% of the money is coming from investors.
Exactly.
You want to use money from investors to help, for example, just $500 million project, for example. If they're going to ask for $200 million from investors, and you know the developer is going to put his own money in it with the bank, and there's some sort of responsibility and liability in there, you look at it and say, this is more solid than an EB5 center that is asking for 95% of the funds from investors. We don't even know what's going on here.
Yes.
The owner doesn't even have anything at stake at it. He's taking your money into his projects.
Exactly. It is why usually all the projects that you are looking for, always the company actually is like a fiduciary, and is on the first line. It's very important that you have the company on the first line because, like was Jeffrey said, yes, obviously. So the developer have a part of the money, of course, but it's not to have, because the competition it is why with who? It is with the Chase Bank. This is the big bank, you know, and they don't have to be on the first line because if they have on the first line of the project, your money is at risk. And because it's exactly the same things when you take a loan for a house or an apartment. You take an apartment for the house, you don't pay your apartment, the bank of the liens of your apartment, and they take the foreclosure of your apartment. That's it. It's exactly the same process. Remember what I was telling you, is a real estate project development. So it's exactly working. You can compare, the comparison that you can do is with the little apartment because the system is exactly the same. You know, so at the beginning when you are the company, the EB5 company that you process that is on the first line is more comfortable, believe me. And it is why we select some project that we are on the first line. Because, yes, sorry.
Yeah, and no, he's correct. And what ends up happening is people say, well, why are they even using this money? It makes sense because if I'm going to build a residential tower in Manhattan, I don't even know what that costs, but let's just say it's $100 million to build. If I borrow $75 million from the bank at 6%, it's a huge amount of interest. If I borrow 3/4 of that money from EB5 investors at 0.5%, because when you make an investment, it's not an investment for you to make a return off of. The returns are nominal. The idea is I'm getting my green card. So now you take this interest money that's almost free to the EB5 center, you mix it with some of the bank money, and now you might be looking at a 2% interest to pay rather than 6% when you're the developer, and it's a huge amount of money that you save to get your project done. So that's why, because people say, what are they using my money for if the bank will loan? Well, of course the bank's going to loan, but at 6%, not at 1%.
Exactly. And you say, what do you say? So is for the EB5, $800,000, okay, to resume, you have to create 10 jobs in the first year. So this project that there is are usually what I saw from the Smart Brickell, for example, I will explain to you, there is already 46, but they have to create 10 jobs for you, EB5. This is why those projects, they don't have a lot of coupon. Sometimes they have 7, 10, not so lot because depend of the number of the employee that they can create for the first year to apply you EB5 project.
They have what's called indirect jobs and direct jobs.
Yes.
So these centers have been able to demonstrate, well, wait a minute, we're creating jobs in the center just by the very people constructing this project. So typically, if the center is approved, they're approved based off of an economic analysis that's done to show how many jobs they're going to provide. And if they've opened the doors up for their $30 million and they need 60 investors or whatever amount they need, there's a very good chance that those job requirements have already been fulfilled and there isn't an issue. Where you run into an issue is if the project is weak and it doesn't get finished, because then you can't demonstrate that the project actually was completed, and then you've got this 2-year green card and you can't do anything with it in the end. You don't qualify for your green card afterward, your 10-year card, because you can't remove the conditions because the project failed. But you don't have to worry about, what I'm getting at is you don't have to worry about the employees. When you have an EB5 center, it's the center's responsibility. They know they've already got approved on that, what they've had to do to get that open and approved as an EB5 center. You don't have to scratch your head and say, I'm giving $800,000, am I going to get my employees out of this?
Exactly.
You have to worry about that when you do your own EB5. But if you go to a center that's approved, it's pretty much a hands-off situation. You make your investment and you sit back and you go and you watch it develop and you see it being built, but at the same time you're not really involved at all. You're just a very, very, very minority shareholder in that project, and you're just acting like the bank, basically.
Yes, exactly. You are an investor. You are a shareholder investor. Exactly. This is exactly the process that when you're coming inside the EB5 project. So after the company, the EB5 company, take care that the project first is approved by the SAS government, and so on for the job and the process. So they take care of the process. You can working on the project, of course, because those projects, for example, that we have in Miami or the other one in the center of Florida, that Yellowstone it is a very nice project. I will show you, and it's very secure because there is already 46, if I remember, 46 or EB5 approved on this one. So all the project that we're working with the company, we're working directly with the company that we know, and the project is already approved, and they act like, again, a fiduciary for you. Yeah, sure.
So when you say we act like a bank as a small amount of shareholder in that,
yes,
that brings us to the previous issue that we don't have a necessity to physically be here. We touched the EB2 visa.
Well, with the EB5, when you file your initial paperwork, it doesn't give you an immigration status unless you file with the adjustment of status documents. At the same time, we call it concurrent filing, where if you're here on a visa, on an H-1B, and you make an investment into an EB5 center, you can file because your feet are already here holding an immigration status. If you're sitting in Russia, China, Japan, and you aren't in the US, you have to file the first series of papers, get that approved, and then process that through the consulate in your country when your priority date is available to get your visa to come in. But if you're already here with a legal status, more likely than not, you're not subject to having to leave. You can stay and adjust your status under that all at one time. It speeds up the process much faster when you file concurrent filing, if you're eligible, for the green card at the same time that you file your 526. So if you're an investor in Russia and you're not in US, you have no visa, you can't concurrent file because you're not here. You only file the first paperwork, which is a 526, and you wait a year and a half, 2 years for that to be approved. And then from that point, you take it and you process it at the embassy because you're still not in the US. If you were here on an H-1B, as a student, as any type of visa that could, an E2, you could file all the paperwork together to immediately process your green card and your 526 paperwork at the same time. So it's a lot faster and it gives you the right to do it as long as you're here in legal status.
Yes, see, and so like I was telling you, last month, yes, the approval for this is the things at the beginning. You must have the I-526E approved. What is the I-526E? This is the source of fund. At the moment that you have the source of fund approved, we can go ahead. The better thing that it is, first step is working with an attorney. There is 1,000 attorneys that they are doing for the immigration. Under 1,000 attorneys, there is 100 that really do the EB5 process correctly. And from the 100, there is really 25 specialists. So you can working with your attorney, obviously, but it's better to working with a specialist because last year I saw that we have 2 EB5 last years denied. And the first one it was because the guys want to use Bitcoin, so he cannot do it anymore, I guess. And the second one it was because the attorney he doesn't answer enough quickly to the government for the question that they're asking. So the attorney is really the first step if you want to invest, as well in the E2. But the E2 is a little different, but the EB5 is very, very important to have a specialist.
Technical. You know,
yes.
You really have to understand the inner workings of that, and like we just really touched on it generally about depending what country you're from, what is your status, can you stay, can you file concurrently, do you have to leave? So there's a whole bunch of things working at that, and it's probably the most sophisticated immigration process.
Yeah.
In all of immigration, these EB5s.
Yes, and I saw that last month we have a I-526E approved in 1 month with one project. It's not always like that. I don't want to say that because sometimes it can take 1 year. Yes,
sometimes it can take even longer than this, right? This is ideal, but
when it's clear, there is no reason that is not quick. You know, when it's clear and you go to the right project again. The real project, like I was telling you at the beginning, and you have the source of fund that is clear, don't make sense to don't have the approval quickly, you know? So let's continue and see the benefit of the EB5 visa program. So of course you can have the US green card, the continuously with the 2 years at the beginning. You're exactly like an American citizen. You can traveling, you can have a permit for working, you can have all the education for you, the children, you can have all of them like your citizenship.
You're going to get a green card, you just can't vote until you have your citizenship. Who wants to vote anyway, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then like it says here, right, you can enter and exit US without restriction, and you get visa-free access to a lot of countries, even though you don't have citizenship, you have the green card. This is really important too, is that
Yes.
permanent residency, you can get student loans for your kids, right? I mean, on an E2, you can't because you're not a permanent resident, so everything is cash, no loans, right? You can get an automotive loan and you can get a home mortgage, but student loans, government-backed funding assistance, you can't access unless you have the green card, which comes from this EB5. What else we have on here that's obviously you're entitled to citizenship afterward. Some people want it, some people don't, but you're entitled to it through the EB5.
After how many years? 5 years, I guess?
Yeah, and that's the typical period. You're going to get a green card for 2 years, and then you're going to remove the conditions on that green card proving that you satisfied the requirements, and they're going to give you a 10-year card after. During that 10 years, 3 years into it, right, you can apply for citizenship because you've had your green card for 5 years, and you're eligible for U.S. citizenship.
Okay, the requirement. The requirement, so like I was telling you just before, the more important, this is this one, pour fond. I-526E, this is really the more important things, and of course, the attorney. Yes, because this is really, really the 526E, this is really the job for the attorney, and he have to do a good job. If he do a good job, you can have the approval very quick. Background check. Of course, if you have a background check or do something, you cannot have it because there is a background check by the government. So if you commit some fraud, you can deny it.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people have, oh, I stole something when I was younger, oh, I got a DUI in my country. There's a lot of these things are fine. It's when you have certain felony convictions, certain things that are serious enough at the time to warrant you from not coming in. I always recommend, if you know you have something in advance, have the attorney look at it and see to make sure you're not precluded from actually getting your green card based off of that, because you could go through the whole process, pay the money, send it out, and now you're not going to get your green card because your background is not going to clear.
Exactly. The thing that it is your attorney is on your side. So you have to be, is always, the attorney working always for you. It doesn't matter what you have to do, but he is working for you. So you have to be honest with the attorney and say exactly all that you have is better. Like this, he can do a good job, you know. Let's continue. So for exactly the required fund that we need for the EB5 project. It's not always, I will develop in a little bit this because it's not always the same fee. So first, $800,000 for the investment. It can coming for the gift, it can coming for the loan, it can coming for the equity, it can coming from whatever, it cannot coming from something that is not legal. So because this is the more important thing again, like I was telling Jeffrey, this is the government that they take care where the money coming from. The fee that it is, the regional center administration fee is $80,000. It's not always, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, depending on the case, but usually this is the average. The attorney fee is $25,000 to $35,000. It's not the same fee. It's not a negotiation. It is dependent of all the stuff that they have to do.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Let me just touch these two.
Yeah, sure.
So, reason is, it depends on a lot with number of people in your family, right? Some people have a family, 5, 6 people. There you have 6 actual green card petitions to prepare and file off. Also,